So let's do a quick little introduction. What we're going to be covering in this is something that's expanded on much more in depth in my new course, The Rhythm Guitar Style of Eldon Shamblin. This course was developed out of listening to hours upon hours of Bob Wills' record For the Last Time, and then an Eldon Shamblin solo record called Guitar Genius, and really just slowing it down and trying to pick out every little thing he did, because he had such a special and unique way of playing rhythm guitar. And it sounds more complicated, I think, than it actually is. So it's one of those things that the more and more I got to explore it, the more and more I realized it kind of fits within a lot of the things us guitar players already know. Movable chords, all these like open cowboy chords we're familiar with. People like calling it the cage system. That kind of seems the normal thing. And that's just found all over the neck. And so I found a lot of these things just start kind of connecting together, and it started making a lot of sense in my mind. So wanted to do kind of a course on that and share that, because there's not too much written or posted about Eldon Shamblin, and don't want that to be lost or forgotten. So what we're really going to be working with in this session is we're going to take one chord shape. And this is not going to be a fully like comprehensive look at a song or anything like that. We're just going to talk about how one chord shape can move into another chord shape, and then really apply that to like diatonic changes. So in the little caption, I think I labeled it. Let me see. I forgot already. Connecting the one chord to the 4, 5, 2, and 6. And Western swing music, and classic country music, and swing era jazz, and even bebop, early bebop stuff. Playing within the 4, 5, 2, and 6 chords was like a large part of the sound. And so it's a really great way to learn how to navigate that as a lead player and as a rhythm player. And I think with rhythm guitar, we often overlook it, and it's like, it's rhythm guitar. We want to focus on lead, but knowing this stuff, I can't tell you how much it's helped my lead playing, and just foundational to understanding the fretboard. So with all of that, I thought we'd camp out in the key of F today, because that's right in the middle of the fretboard. And I want us to stick with this, what I'm going to call, because again, it seems like the cage system is kind of the most widely used thing. We'll base it off of that, with this C chord shape. So if you're not familiar with the cage system, what this is, just take your C chord that's open, and what I like to do is rearrange it so that I imagine we have an imaginary like capo or bar across these open strings, right? So this is now what my C chord looks like. I'll break it down for you. My pinky's on the 3rd fret. My ring finger's on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. I've got an open 3rd string, and then a what is that, 2nd finger on my 1st fret of my 2nd string. So that's C, E, G, C, right? So what I'm going to do with my pinky is move this all the way up to my F note. So C, D, E, F. There's my F chord, right? So we're up here at the 8th fret. Now the first thing to get in your mind about Eldon's playing is that 90% of it is downwards or descending. So for example, in this chord, our descending pattern is going to start on the F, the root note, and we're just going to go down our major scale. So we have F, E, there's our major 7, D, that's our 6th, C, that's our 5, B flat, that's our 4, and 3. I'm sorry, and A, that's our 3. So we've got 1, major 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to harmonize it with our triad on top. So we've got A, C, and F, right? So now we're going to go F over the chord, E over the chord, D over the chord, C over the chord. Very, very rarely do I do B flat over the chord, but for now, let's just do it. B flat over the chord, and then A over the chord, and very rarely do I do that one. You should be able to do it, but just limit yourself if you want to at the beginning to just being able to go 1, major 7, 6, 5. Just by doing that, we already kind of start sounding like Eldon Shamblin. So once more, I'm just playing a pick on the bass note and then a quick strum on the top 3 notes of the chord. So we've got, right? So those are just strictly major scale in the key of F. Now, the first change I want to start talking about is setting up a 4 chord. So in the key of F, that's our B flat chord. Our closest B flat chord is right here at the 6th fret. Again, for those who like to reference the cage system, that is this open E chord moved all the way up to the 6th fret. So check this out. We can play, if we've got like 2 bars, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're right in there at the B flat, all right? So that would set us up super nicely just by moving through our major scale. Again, key of F, F, E, D, C, down to the B flat. So that's strictly just using basic major scale descending. So into our B flat chord. Now, if you want to kind of accentuate that change a little bit more, we can move away from the major scale and add our flat 7 to it. And that sets up the 4 chord. So our flat 7, let's just do it in single notes. We've got F, E, E flat, that's our flat 7. Then we could go D, C, B flat, or just go E flat, C, B flat. So if we harmonize that, there's our major, major 7, flat 7. And if you want to, we could do just a normal C with the F chord above it, and then into B flat. So let's hear something like that. We might go, right? And that's a nice little. What if we wanted to approach it from the A up to the B flat? We might go something like this. Into the B flat there. So 2 ways of doing that, utilizing that E flat to set that up. Another thing we can do is set up the rest of the chord to be an F7 chord. So instead of just playing this first little part going straight into F7, we could land maybe like this. Right? So that's now setting the rest of the chord up as an F7 chord with the C in the bass. So what I'm doing there is taking my A, C, and F, the triad, and rearranging it to be A, E flat, and F with that C in the bass. So again, we're getting that dominant 7 harmony that will lead us straight back to the B flat. So now we've got into our B flat chord. So another way of doing that, instead of totally utilizing that E flat, we utilize the dominant harmony and the top strings. So one more way in which we can do that is combine both of them. We could go or so those are some basic ways of getting F7 to B flat. So that's the first change we'll talk about, going from the 1 to the 4. The second change I want to talk about is going from the 1 to the 5 chord. So again, key of F, if we want to go to the C chord, which is our 5, our closest C chord, we've got kind of 2 options. We have this C note right here, and then we can play the triad on top, G, C, E, or we can play the triad, but with the E in the bass, the 3rd. So those are our 2 options. what I would do is just play descending. And then if I want to stay on the same note, I've got the C there, or most times what I would do is bump up and play that E note in the bass. So you'd have, right? And that sets up our E chord, or sorry, excuse me, our C chord with the E in the bass. So you've got just going down the major scale, into the 5 chord. Now, to start kind of breaking out a little bit of strictly just the major scale, we can use a diminished chord as a passing chord. And this is something that in that first section of my course I talk about. There is some theory behind it, but for right now, I want to make it as simple as possible. So if we're playing F, and bass note wise we go F, E, D, and then I want to approach this E note, that's the 3rd of C, by a half step, like so. To get there, what I can do is harmonize this half step with a diminished chord on top. So just a string of minor thirds. So that's E flat, A, C, and F sharp. So harmonically that sounds like diminished to the C chord. So what you can now do is go and you've got that change under your belt too. So that's another one I would use, and that's just kind of a nice little rule of thumb to use when you're in a bind and you're a half step away and need something quick to kind of harmonize it. Throw down a diminished chord, 8-9 times out of 10 it works. And you'll kind of find as you play and explore a little more how that works. So we've got diminish. All right, and then just without basic major scale down. So those are 2 options that you can use for your 1 to 5 chord. Now the next one, we've got a 1 to the 2 chord. So in this instance, typically our 2 chord is a 7th chord. So we can try something like this. We might go F, E, D, C. Now we're not going to land on the root, we're going to land on the 3rd of G, which is right here on the 7th fret, and there's our B note, the major 3rd. So bass line wise, we've got and to talk a little bit about this voicing, we've got our 3rd in the bass, that's B. We've got our root on the 5th fret of the 4th string, that's our G. We've got the 5th, that's our D, and that's on the 3rd string. And we've got a root, if we want to, on the 2nd string. So we could go right, and that sets up a G chord. Another way in which we can do it, and this is kind of jumping around a little bit, is we could go F, E, D, then up to the F sharp. It kind of sounds a little weird, but it still works. You can use that as diminished to get to the G right here. Right, so again, that's utilizing that half step rule of going F, we need 1 change to get to G. Back to the F. So those are 2 ways in which we can get to the G chord. Like so, or if you wanted to, we could, instead of playing that G chord here, right, at the 7th fret, we could play it if we wanted to go all the way down to the B here. So we could go, right? The little passing. And all that works just fine. So we've got so far a 4, 5, and 2, and now our last one we'll talk about is a 6th chord. And in the key of F, that's going to be our D chord. Our closest one is right here at the 5th fret. So just a bar D. So we could do a couple of things. We could go, again, coming from this F position, we could go then right back up. So that's one way of just playing down. Or we could set it up as a 7th chord if we wanted to. Excuse me. That's one. Another one is we could go all the way down to this A, and we could play the D with an A in the bass, like so. And this is more of a Freddie Green voicing, but Eldon sometimes, from what I've heard, I believe he would use that as well. So we can maybe go. Right, and so that's just moving down single notes, C, B flat, with the A in the bass, and harmonizing that D7 above it. So if you're not familiar with that voicing, that's just A, skip a string, F sharp, C. If it's a slower song, you want to have more space, you could throw in an E there if you want. Any of those ways are fine. One thing to note is if you're going to start dropping 7th chords like that example I did, and I probably should have backed up and said that, where I went. You can resolve to D7 in a sense. I mean, like it's technically not wrong. Watch out for what the melody's doing though. There might be some conflicting notes there. So again, 3 different ways. Another one. And those are, yeah, I would do that, and then you can do the 7th if you want. Again though, using that 7th quite more exclusively than the others is going to make your ear want to go to that B flat chord. So you got to be careful kind of about that. So that's kind of the basics of just taking one chord shape and figuring out where are the most common chords around it. Of course, there's a lot more to all of it. And you can start preceding chords with other chords like subdominants. But this is kind of some foundational stuff that when I first started learning, these are some of the patterns I saw. So to quickly review everything, let's just do a quick version of the F to the B flat, or 1 to 4. We've got nothing special, just major. Now with the dominant 7. Right? Another way of dominant 7ing, or putting a dominant 7 in it. Excuse me, let me try that again. Now let's take it 1 to the 5. Nothing special, just the major. Back up to the major. Now with the diminished. there's 1. Now let's take it from the 1 to the 2. All right, that's one way. Or back to the 5. And now let's do 1 to the 6. Now to the 2. Another way of doing 1 to the 6. This is just major scale. Then up to the 2. Back to 5. 1. So those are a bunch of different ways of doing that. I found just like doing things like that and kind of calling out when you're going to change is helpful. Not really picking a tune per se, but just kind of playing through and just seeing and developing your timing and sense of when to change and when to use those. Has really helped me a lot. If you have any questions, please shoot me a little comment. I'll have a few seconds or so to talk about that. I hope this has been informative and helpful. Lots of cool stuff. I'll do a shameless plug for the rest of the course stuff. So talking about the different sections. In the first section, I go through all of the main shapes he uses, just like that, and talk about the descending and ascending patterns. I talk about some really basic substitutions, how to throw in some diminished chords and how to use some minor substitutions. And then what I do from there is we take everything we learned and we learn a few like passages and examples, and then thanks Andy. He was my guinea pig when I first did this on Skype, so hopefully it's better. But we take some of this stuff and apply it straight to the Western swing tune, Stay All Night, Stay a Little Longer, which is a cool one because it's really one chord the entire time with the really quick 5 chord at the ends of the phrases. And he has a unique way of utilizing some different changes in there. So we explore that. And in part of that arrangement is a direct rip from the record for the last time, and then the rest of it is just kind of alterations that I've come up with. And that takes you through that. The third section is all about implying more of the kind of augmented sounding stuff and more diminished, more actual chord substitutions where you're taking a simple 1 chord to the 5 chord and putting in a 6-2-5, and then like the whole Faded Love kind of thing where he does the 4 augmented, minor, diminished, and then that kind of stuff, and then using some tritone substitutions that he would often do, and elaborating a little bit more on some different chord formations that he would play out of that give kind of more of a fuller sound, a little more jazzier, however you say that. And we apply all of that to Bubbles in My Beer, which the A section to that tune is really just a 1 and a 5, but we throw in a minor sub to kind of change the tone and the palette of colors up in that tune. And then over the bridge, we throw in it goes to a 4 chord, we go through that whole back to the 1, into the 5, the minor sub, with the 6-2-5-1, and that kind of stuff. And so we put all of that in there, and we have a nice arrangement of Bubbles in My Beer. So a lot of cool stuff in those things. It'll keep you busy for a while. And additionally, there is a transcription pack of Panhandle Rag, It's a live. There's a live video of him on YouTube playing Panhandle Rag, and there's some really cool stuff in there. So I transcribed, I want to say like the first 1 to 2 choruses of playing through that. And then his version of Faded Love from For the Last Time, as well as San Antonio Rose from For the Last Time. So that is an additional thing that's priced way lower, but for some further study. So all of that to say, check that out. Go back and review this. It will help you, but bigger ideas are within that course. And stay tuned for part 2, which we'll get more into using some of like the passing note stuff, where instead of just playing chords the whole time, we have some single note fills and some passing. I did a little bit of that, like when we went from that kind of thing. And more substitutions and cool little fancy licks. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you check it out. Mean a lot, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.